So the panel that I was on at DLD was tons of fun, and that was a great conversation. The conversation, it arced around this idea of the new consumer, and I was kind of coming at it from a unique point of view, which is how we at Tumblr see the new consumer, and I broke it down into a couple of points. I think one, most importantly, because some of my other panelists were talking about big data and the use of data protection rights, and so on. We just made the point from Tumblr, as far as profiteering around data, some people say data is the new oil, and we really think of it as the new DNA, right? And the consumer has a right to understand how their digital identity online is being used for good or for bad, and that's something that on the panel we might not have made as good a point, which is that data can actually be used for good uses. But that's one aspect of the new consumer. I think another aspect of the new consumer is how intelligent they are and how fast they make decisions as far as judging not just brands, but any potential friend or organization that they might want to subscribe to online. The new consumer looks at brands first as publishers and themselves as an audience, waiting to be informed or entertained or visually delighted. They don't look at brands as peddlers of product, right? And the example that we like to use is, let's say, Nike with a pair of running shoes. I might buy a pair of running shoes once a year from Nike, but I subscribe to their running Tumblr, and I check in multiple times a day for tips on how to run better. So this dramatic arc and shift from a brand to a publisher, and the content required by a brand to constantly publish good content so that they're retaining their audience and building it, that's transforming advertising as we know it, and publishing for that matter. And I'd say that's something that the new consumer is leading the charge there. I think that the millennials in some ways are the figurehead for this transformation, but a good way to, and we at Tumblr are known for having a huge grip and the largest millennial base, this big grip on youth culture. But at the same time, millennials have grown up. They're starting families, they're buying cars, they're buying houses. And I think in some ways, the grip that we at Tumblr have on youth culture has changed into just a grip on culture, period, right? As the millennials have gotten older. And it's worth pointing out that at this point, I don't think it's a young and old divide as far as being a new consumer. It's actually has to do with the skills you have existing in social channels, using your smartphone in modern ways, creating content rapidly from your phone, understanding the difference between good content and bad content. The example I used on the panel was that my grandmother, for example, knows how to use her iPad and FaceTime with me better than my mom. Neither of them are millennials, but there's this gap between skill set. And we, in the technology, digital, social, advertising industry, we all have highly refined skill sets. We make the assumption sometimes that everyone we talk to is just like us, but that's not necessarily the case. So I think the big divide going forward is really between your skill set as a consumer and maybe brands understanding Millennial A might have an advanced skill set, Millennial B might have a little bit less advanced. Old and young, it's all going to mix together a little bit more. So one of my favorite sayings is act native to become native. And that's something that we talk with brands about. On the panel, what was fascinating is one of the panelists made the point that, can you fake authenticity? In other words, can you fake native? And you can for a certain amount of time, but eventually the users sniff it out, right? Because again, they're moving so quickly and judging you so subconsciously that the best thing a brand can do if they want to succeed in content marketing and on platforms like Tumblr is not just understand the native behaviors of the communities that they want to attract through their content, but they also need to understand who they are as a brand and what's native to them. And that, importantly, and I mean maybe shockingly, is the single biggest struggle that most brands have. You have a meeting with the brand and you say, what are your goals and objectives? And they can't tell you because that's a terrifying thing to commit to. They can't tell you what their own native embodiment is. And if you don't know that, if you don't know what you stand for, I guess in a content first, publishing first age, you can't even get started attracting consumers. So great examples of brands using Tumblr, I'd say, and acting native to become native. One great brand is IBM. So Tumblr, TUMBLR, IBMblr is their Tumblr. It's IBMBLR. Right, even with the name, they're exhibiting native behavior, because one of the native behaviors of our users is to put BLR after their names and Tumblrize their own persona. So IBM is fascinating to me because they understood what their brand objectives were, which were basically to, sell more server infrastructures and increase the amount of consulting business they do. They were also very, very agreeable when we worked with them to translate their brand objectives into passion pillars as represented by content. So, selling more servers as represented by content is actually messaging to the world that you're an innovative company and that you have a history of innovation going back 100 years. So when you go to IBM's Tumblr, they're not talking about products or services or anything. They're talking about what they stand for through pillars. And it's amazing. Inspirational quotes that they turn into quote GIFs or quote cinemagraphs with all the text moving in a painterly way, or they take their white papers and all those patents that they want the world to know they're responsible for, and they turn them into patent GIFs. So short, snackable, animated GIFs that are visual, that explain to you what that patent actually does. And I don't know if you've ever tried to read a white paper around a patent. I have. And it's like impossible. I mean, it's beyond my brain. But the patent GIFs are collectible. They're teaching people. They're useful. They've never been done. And they really show the way a brand can first understand who they are natively, and then understand who the native audience they want to attract, how they like to receive their content. So I think that's a great example. Another great example that I'm really fond of, coming from the movie studio side, is just Universal Pictures. Universal Studios, their content marketing game is unparalleled. They worked with some of our artists, our creators, for Ouija, a PG-13 horror title. They did a lot of work understanding how teen girls like to receive horror content and how they make purchase decisions around ticket buying. And they ended up working with a lot of our own teen creators to create a whole content program around scary, titillating, but collectible content about the Ouija board. And it educated you about the Ouija board's history. It also scared you a little bit. And it promoted the movie, which opened to #1. And it was collectible, and that's kind of cool, seeing a brand get the native, buy into it, and have success. And one of the things you've heard our founder David Karp speak about, as well as very recently, is how helpful it's been to receive Yahoo's guidance and how they've allowed us to move faster and accomplish things at a much more blistering pace. In the past 3 months alone, the number of pro-user features that we've introduced, such as the new video player, that it's pretty cool. It docks to the right side of the stream so that you can continue sitting inside the Tumblr stream, consuming content while watching a video at the same time. I think it's very, very cool. So the Yahoo acquisition has allowed us to move faster, and that's something that, both on the Yahoo and Tumblr side, everyone is very, very, holds sacred our user base, our community. We've been out since 2007, since day one, talking about how ultimately Tumblr is a community of creators. It's not about an algorithm. It's not about some sort of sophisticated patented technology. Our users are Tumblr, and Tumblr is our users. And that, that core belief feeds into everything we do. So we have never been worried about post-acquisition. I think it's strengthened us, and it's really, really great to see our users embrace this new Tumblr as well. I mean, the thing that is on my mind all day long is that it's only the beginning of this broader shift from brands basically to becoming publishers first and sellers of products second. And the people that they're trying to attract are audiences first and customers second, right? Because I think you hear the phrase, it's only the beginning, and you think about the vast amount of time that we all spend staring at our phones and being online. Tumblr is #1 for time spent on social platforms, 2 years straight. Every time someone logs into Tumblr, they're spending roughly 20 minutes tuning in to all of this content. All of that content, some portion of it is represented by brands, right? In this new content-first world, if you're a brand and you're not publishing, you essentially don't exist, because we've already admitted that everyone is staring down here and doing this or staring at their computer screen. If you're not publishing, you don't exist. If you're not publishing good content, you're really just turning people off. And it's only the beginning of brands really, I think, embracing not just content marketing, but content creation, and starting to dig into fascinating things such as how can I get content at scale, how can I get content fast and speedily, how can I get a lot of content, and then more important than all of it is how can I get quality content. Combining all those things together is something that we at Tumblr feel like we've got a huge amount to offer in that space, and I think that's something that people are going to see more of this year. Oh my God, why did I come to DLD? Well, to learn how to think, and to think about what's a year ahead, right? We've been coming to Tumblr for 4 years now, and our founder, David Karp, has spoken at DLD twice. So we have like a long history of coming here, but one of the things that is fascinating just being at DLD is being totally aware that this does not exist in the US as a blend of the quality and depth of thought leadership and speaker quality and panel quality. I unfortunately want to attend all the panels, but they're running at the same time, so it's not possible. But you look at that quality combined with a more, I would say, like mid-sized intimacy. It feels very personal. It feels like a lot of thought went into making everyone feel appreciated, whether you're an attendee or a speaker. And it's irreverent. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Last night, I shifted from, I think, hearing the founder of Etsy speak to like watching like a pretty cool like avant-garde freestyle violinist up on stage like performing, and that's pretty cool to be able to get both sides of that.